As queer people, we dream a world in which we are not queer, where we are not marginalized, where we are not outside, where we have a world where we get to exist as fully ourselves and be ourselves happily without oppression. And we dream that. And by dreaming that, we start to perform it ourselves in our everyday interactions with each other. And through our everyday interactions with each other, we build that world, and that brings the dream into reality.
Content warnings for this episode include anti-trans bigotry and mental health issues. Howdy, folks. Welcome to Genderful, a talk show interviewing gender diverse people about their special interests. Hi, I'm GenderMeowster, and my pronouns are they, them.
Hi, I'm Miranda Katita, and my pronouns are she, her.
The focus of our show is to interview trans, non-binary, agender, two-spirit, and gender diverse people regarding their special interests, passion projects, and resources for the gender diverse community.
We want our audience to know that we hold multiple diverse identities and bring these lenses to the show with our passion for telling our stories.
I identify as non-binary, transmasculine, polyamorous, ADHD, autistic, and disabled with chronic pain and mobility issues. I also am white and reside in the United States.
I identify as trans feminine, neurodivergent, queer, and a person of color residing in Canada. We invite you to remember that we are whole people with robust lives, friendships, challenges, and successes. We love and are loved, and we are delighted to share these stories with you.
As always, we kindly remind our listeners that no person is a monolith of their identities. Your identities can change over time and are valid every step of the way. And if you think you're gender diverse, you are gender diverse. There's no social or medical prerequisite to be included in the community.
Genderful would like to acknowledge the Indigenous peoples and unceded lands that the producers, hosts, and guests live and have dwelt upon. Today we honor the
Salish,
Mohawk, Algonquin, and Anishinabewaki,
and Luiseño and Pacoamish people. And also this land that I am on is also federally recognized by bands of the La Jolla, Pauma, Pechanga, Rincon, Soboba, Luiseño, Pacoamish people. And it's also important to acknowledge this land remains the shared space among the Kuupangaxwichem and Cupeño and Kumeyaay and Ipai peoples. Apologies for my potential mispronunciations of those words, but love to all.
You did your best. We honor the elders, the human, plant, and animal ancestors of these lands, and celebrate the living descendants of these peoples. May all beings tend these lands for the goodness of the next 7 generations and beyond.
So welcome everyone to a very special and exciting episode of Genderful Podcast, a show interviewing gender diverse people about their special interests. This week, our guest, Jessie Gender, she, they pronouns, is chatting with us about the intersection of science fiction and gender again.
Yay!
We had so much fun the last time that we invited them back for some more. Also, friends, Jessie just released this really amazing film that we're going to be discussing today. It's called Identiteaze.
Yeah.
It's available exclusively on nebula.tv. And I've definitely been watching it on repeat because it's phenomenal. And you should too. More views. Means we have a chance of more identities. I'm just saying.
Yeah.
So welcome to the show.
We will be talking about
Jessie.
that later.
I'm so excited. I'm so excited. Welcome. I'm so excited you're here.
Thank you for
Welcome
having me.
in.
I'm pumped. I am very pumped to be here. It's always wonderful to be on here and to talk to both of you. And you are both so wonderful. And I was saying this before we went live, I'm very pumped to talk about the nitty gritty of the film, because most people who watch it, and I've been interviewed mostly by cis people about it, and they're like, you made a movie about a thing. And I'm like, yes, but I would like to talk about what the movie is about.
Yes.
So and with people who will
so
actually
much.
want to go into the nitty gritty of it. So I'm very excited. So just overall, I'm very, very pumped.
Yes. We're very much here for a deep dive of the film. So spoilers ahead.
Yes.
If you haven't seen the movie, stop being a doofus and go fix that. Go fix it. It's only $30 for the year. If you use the promo code that you get for signing up under Jessie's link, it's only $30.
The Nebula
it's only
TV
$5
Identiteaze
per month too, I believe.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Right.
If you don't want it for a whole year, you can spend $5. I mean, come on, you can scrounge together $5. I believe in you.
Yeah, identities.tv/ or sorry, nebula.tv/identities is the link.
Yes. So yes,
I did it as an announcement link as well.
Yes.
Will you subscribe to Nebula just because of your film?
Yeah. Oh,
Yes.
that makes me very, very happy.
I mean, like I originally
But it was
subscribed to
months ago
Nebula.
when you were planning the film. I was like,
Yes.
Cappy, we have to subscribe to Nebula just for this film so it gets made and maybe more because Jesse's
Yes.
content is great.
Oh, thank
I
you
mean, I
very much.
originally subscribed to Nebula like 100% just to watch The Prince. Which
Also
and
fair.
like yes. And then like, oh, Jesse's making a movie. I guess I'll renew.
Yeah, and they're doing and then they also now they have Abigail's Dracula's ex-girlfriend
Yes,
coming
yes.
presumably in the fall. I know they just picture locked, so I don't know if they have a release date yet, but
Yeah, because they wrapped up production like actually like the week of the Identities premiere. So that should be
Yeah.
coming out soon.
Yeah.
But we're already getting sidetracked here. So we do have a couple questions, a couple intro questions that we like to ask all of our guests.
Yeah.
You've probably been asked these questions before in your previous appearance, but
Oh, good.
hey, maybe your answers have changed. I mean,
I'm
that's part
definitely a different person than last time.
exactly.
We all changed. So, yeah.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, I'm sure this is relatable for a lot of people. Is that just life is a long journey, but especially for trans folks, who we are in one given moment in time is very different from a different moment in time. So, so that's enough of me, wagging my tongue. So, so our first question is, what might be the things you can trace back to your youth that indicated you might be gender diverse one day?
I mean, the obvious answer is science fiction stuff.
Yes.
Like the things that I was identifying with in science fiction, like Star Trek and characters like Dax, like very overtly characters that were like related to a very queer and trans lens and metaphor. So Dax from Deep Space Nine is very obviously the big one, but stuff like Animorphs is also a big one in there. Like weird being able to transform into different animals and bodies is a big thing in there. So I can think of like other major things. I mean, like that's the biggest one. Like I found a lot of identification through science fiction, fantasy, stories, because that's where I was able to kind of imagine possibilities for myself and for my body and who I could be beyond where I was sort of stuck in the everyday life. I think that's sort of the biggest thing.
Yeah, no, that's like tremendously relatable. It's like science fiction and fantasy allow us to explore, it's in the name, the fantastical. It kind of lets us explore beyond, our natural world and explore different other states of being. So it's not at all surprising that a lot of trans folks are into these genres, particularly the sort of body swapping or body morphing or body like changing or like transhumanism kind of genres is very applicable to our experience.
And also video games too, thinking about it as well, like getting to, I think Mass Effect. I mean, that style hits in the science fiction zone, doesn't it? So, but Mass Effect of like getting to play as a, woman character in that game who has a very full range of romantic options, as well as just how people both do and don't treat her differently because of her gender in different ways in that series, which is always interesting. It's an interesting thing to talk about with video games.
It is.
Gender.
So like a shameless plug here. I recently completed my Mass Effect Let's Play. So I just posted
69 episodes.
Yes. No, 69 was Baldur's Gate. This one was 63.
I goofed him up.
Yes.
Sorry.
That's all right. But it's interesting because like well before my transition, I played through the Mass Effect. So I played through the Mass Effect series when they first came out. Played as the male shepherd because I thought of myself as a man at the time. And I have to be male shep. I'm putting myself in the game. And then having with Legendary Edition, having replayed the game, playing as female shepherd, I've gone through both like playthroughs and both experiences. And you're right. It is interesting how differently characters treat you based on your gender.
Yeah. And also like in some ways they don't too, which is because like again, the limitations of development part of it, where it's like they don't have time to change the gender for every single thing of the game. So, but that does sort of then play into like, well, gender becomes kind of irrelevant in an interesting way until it is when it comes up in like a sexual context or a relatable context that to like on an interpersonal level, as opposed to an institutional one, which is, you know, for a game about fighting interstellar elder tor monsters who want to destroy all life is pretty interesting in terms of like a kind of weirdly progressive future in that specific aspect.
Yeah, for sure. It's been an interesting experience like replaying, because like Mass Effect 3 came out, I played it, I finished it, and I'm like, I'm never playing this again. Not because I hated it,
Okay.
because it's so emotionally heavy and devastating. It's like, I can't put myself through this again. So I had to wait like 10 years before I could play it again.
I am the weirdo who will defend Mass Effect 3's ending, but the original ending before they added like the extended cut, I actually think the extended cut makes it worse. In my
Really
opinion.
interesting, because like I really like the extended cut. I like having that like closure of like, here's all my friends and here's what happened to them, and because like without that you're just like, cool, so I guess all my friends are dead or whatever. I don't know.
To be honest, I kind of like that, because the original ending kind of had this very 2001: A Space Odyssey sense to it, which is it's not fully explained and you don't get anything literally laid out to you in a lot of ways. You just sort of get like a bit of just like little hints towards stuff, and it's a bit more philosophical and a bit more like out there. I mean, you literally have that Star Child kid that comes out. And while I certainly understand people's disappointment of like the different endings just being the different color waves that happen at the end, that I get. But in terms of the like philosophical concepts that it's trying to play with, I think that is a very heady, very out there science fiction idea that I think kind of goes up there with some of the best science fiction stuff, like again 2001: A Space Odyssey, or like these very philosophical.
I mean, you don't have to sell me on that. 2001 is my favorite movie.
It's great. And so like I love the things that are a bit more open-ended. And so I think the extended cut, and again, this is my opinion, it doesn't have to be anyone else's, but the extended cut, I think, still has the problem of the color-coded different things, and then it just kind of makes a little things too literal for me, of like, okay, and this happened to this race, and this happened to this race, and this happened to this person, and this happened to this person. It's a little bit too much like of a checklist for the story, whereas I kind of like that big, more philosophical, open-ended thing for me. And the real emotional ending for me is when you are about to go up to the Citadel, and you go and talk to each one of the characters, and you have all those like really beautiful moments like talking to them at the end.
Oh my God, yes.
So yeah.
Oh, I like that. Right when you go from you go to Earth to the end of the game, I'm just like waterworks for me. I'm just crying the whole time. So
agree.
I mean, if you want to watch me cry in real time, oh boy, I got lots of videos of me crying like that.
Oh, perfect. I have to tell you, so I can't say it on camera, but did I tell you the thing that I'm doing Mass Effect related?
I don't think so.
All right, remind me. I can't say it on camera, but remind me to tell you off camera.
We'll chat later. We'll chat later about that. You know, with secret.
Sorry, everybody in chat. I would get in trouble if I said it on camera.
So I feel like we have definitely segued. We've definitely like kind of veered off into the beaten path here. So, Meowster, would you like to chime in? You've been quiet.
Well, Jessie, your relationship to gender has changed over time. And I know we've talked about it on past pods, but I know that you use she, they pronouns. And I am curious about, like, I've seen videos where you've talked about some of the different procedures you've had and things. And I wonder, would you describe your journey as kind of being like you started at point A, you went to this sort of like trans, like more like binary trans, and then you're like, maybe not, and then you kind of swung back towards non-binary, and like how has that journey been? Like, do people use they for you, or do you wish there was more they in your life?
I do wish there was more they in my life. Yeah, this is interesting because I've been thinking a lot about it very recently, actually. Because I the way you described it exactly was my journey, where is when I came out, I was hyper femme. Like I wanted to, like, I wore dresses all the time. Like I went fully like, oh, like I want to go to the opposite end of the spectrum that I saw. And so I was like, that's to prove like, this is who I am. But then that didn't feel very comfortable. And over time, in terms of like how I think about myself and my gender, I have decided to like identify more and more as on the non-binary spectrum, but that has come coupled with, I mean, I've talked about the procedures and surgeries I've got done. I've got bottom surgery, facial harmonization surgery, and breast augmentation, which are ones that our culture today would sort of align with a more femme presenting body, right? And what's been interesting in that for me is that by doing those procedures, I have felt more comfortable in my body. And then by being more comfortable in my body, it's allowed me to feel like I can express things beyond that are beyond the sort of like spectrum of our gender normed society. And it's an interesting thing to sort of reconcile and think about because, we tend to tie those two things very much to each other of like, oh, I change my body in a way that will be in accordance with my gender expression, or in my gender identity, I should say. But as I've gone on, I've realized like I do like, it's just been weird. It's now that my body is more femme, I tend to don't wear dress. Like I haven't worn a dress in several years really. And I wear more like button ups and vests, like still femme cut often, but more like a mask femme presentation.
Yeah.
And then in terms of how I think
You've
about
got
my
some
gender,
butch transbian vibes.
exactly. And in terms of my gender identity, it's just something I've been thinking about. This is something I was even thinking about yesterday about maybe wanting to make a video on it, in that, if it wasn't for the fact that we live in a society right now that is very much targeting trans people and attacking trans people for being trans and for choosing to be ourselves and choosing our own bodies and choosing our own gender identity and and basically just choosing ourselves, choosing to pursue who we want to be, not who others want us to be. If we didn't live in a society that vilified that and attacked that through a trans lens very often, I wouldn't think about being trans or my gender really much at all. Like I've hit a place in my life where and it's a very privileged place, I certainly understand that, but I've hit a place in my life where like I don't really think about it often. And the only thing that makes me think about it is just the horrific politicization and sexualization of our bodies and lives that's happening right now. And certainly that is an impetus for me to be like, I want to get out there and fight and defend everybody so that we can push back against that society that's doing that. But for me personally, on a personal level, it's something that I don't really think about a ton beyond that. And I think that that's a really kind of amazing and beautiful thing that I want for everybody. You know what I mean? So
yeah.
No,
I love
that's
that.
really, that's really beautiful.
Yeah.
People in chat are resonating with what you just shared about like the journey continuing, right? It's not just one step. Like my identities have changed so many times in my life, both sexuality and gender. It's like one shifts and then the next one shifts and then the next one shifts, and it's wild. I mean, HRT will also do that to your brain, but
that too,
it's I remember the first time I met or saw or heard of a trans man who wore a skirt on purpose, not to like be sarcastic, but like genuinely as like something that he loved because it was comfortable and it was hot out and he didn't want to wear pants. He wanted to wear like a skirt or a kilt or whatever. And so like seeing, on the opposite sort of another non-binary presentation of like beards that have flowers in them and like the skirts, but also top surgery and like top surgery but in a dress. Like there's all kinds of and I mean masculinizing top surgery in this case. There's obviously top surgery for many gender presentations. So I love the expansiveness of the non-binary identity. It's so fun. And my wife, trans capybara, and I joke about how everything is non-binary. Like I have a bag that I call my not a purse because I used to carry a purse. Now I don't. I have like what I would call a fanny pack, but then my friends in the UK tease me when I say fanny because it means something different there than it does in the States. And so I'm like, well, I shouldn't call it a fanny pack. So I call it my not a purse because I can't remember some other word for it. And bag feels too vague. So I've got my not a purse, and I'm non-binary, and I couldn't remember the word for oat milk yesterday. So I said, "Can you put not milk in my oatmeal for me, honey?"
It's adorable. That's adorable.
So yeah, that's just my disabled brain.
No, that's lovely. And I mean, like, that's, I mean, not to hard swerve about to like the topic, but like that is kind of what Identiteaze is about, isn't it?
I was
Like,
just going to use that segue.
Let's go there.
Yeah.
Let's talk about it. Let's talk about identity.
Let's talk about the film. So yes, I mean, we're kind of talking about how like a lot of things are non-binary.
Bonus warning: we're gonna spoil the movie.
Yes.
So if you haven't seen it, come back to for the end. I don't know, just to drop a lurk or what.
I mean, if you haven't seen it, what are you even doing with your life? Like, it's just go watch it.
And I will say it's also very
wonderful.
watchable if you know what's happening too, because hopefully it's engaging enough to keep you.
Yeah, no, I mean, like, I mean, I made a whole video about this movie, and I even said, it's like, you still watch the movie and still enjoy it. So like, you know, it's but yeah, let's talk about the film. I do want to start by addressing the Aaron in the room. Your producer, the wonderful Aaron McDonald, and some
Dr. Aaron McDonald. Yes.
Dr. Aaron McDonald, yes. Astrophysicist, Hollywood producer, amazing person. I got a chance to actually chat with her for a little bit at the premiere.
She is literally the best person. I was just hanging with her.
Yeah, we're geeking out about science.
Oh yeah, she and I, we were like literally this past weekend we were at San Diego Comic-Con, and we like left the con for a bit and just got beers and chatted about Star Trek Voyager for 2 hours. So she's the best. She's literally the best person. So
awesome. Yeah. And some number of your crew members are named Aaron, and 3 of the main characters in the film are named some variation of Aaron. And your now fiance is also named Aaron.
Yep.
So I'm guessing that is not a coincidence.
I want to know if you name the character after your fiance. I want to know so bad. I wanted to text you about it. I was like, I don't want to.
Well, in a more general sense, I really want to know a bit how your relationships with all the Aarons in your life influence the development
so many
of the
great Aarons.
Yeah. Well, funnily enough, this is actually like a recurring joke on the thing. So to tell the story, actually, short answer is no. They're actually, the name Aarons are not based on my Aaron or any other Aaron. In fact, the character that is closest to the like character that does have a minor inspiration for my Aaron in it is actually creepily enough Abigail Thorne's character Val. At the end of the film, in the after credit sequence, Val comes up to John Delancey's character. I'm spoiling the very end of the film for everybody here. She comes up and calls John Delancey's character Star as like a term of endearment. That is what my Aaron calls me. She calls me my starry sun star is the long name, but she just calls me Star. Like, she doesn't say Jessie. When she calls me Jessie, I hate it. I'm like, don't call me Jessie.
She only calls you Jessie when she's mad at you.
Yes. Yeah. Actually, yes. Like, whenever she calls me Jessie, I'm like, I hate it. Don't do that. It weirds me out. Like, it's like dead naming me, but in my fiance.
It's like when your parents use your full name. It's like Jessie P. Earl.
Exactly. So yes, that exact thing. So I actually use that because again, without spoiling too much of what would hopefully come with further identities stuff, that element of the starry sun star stuff actually becomes very textual within the story going forward. So there's actually a bit of her in that character. But the Aarons themselves. So like you said, there are two of the lead characters, and then the third character, the non-binary sort of combination of them, are all named Aaron. And there's 2 reasons behind that name choice. Is one, I wanted a name that was both the same for a boy and a girl, so they could have that sort of like interesting, like, oh, we're the same person, like really kind of tie that together. But then the other element of it is the A and E, Adam and Eve. It's sort of relating to that sort of Adam and Eve, because one thing that is subtle throughout the film, I didn't want to make it overt throughout the film, but there is a consistent sort of Western culture, religious, European element throughout the whole film of, you know, again, spoiler for the movie, it takes place in this metaverse, this white box, this very corporate space where the 2 main characters exist as avatars within this very corporate environment. And I wanted to, even though it is a very bare, sparse area, reflect a lot of the white supremacy and European style, like colonizer, controller be controlled mindset that is sort of inherent in these binary setups that come from, you know, this hierarchical thinking of us versus them. And so like the white supremacist aspect of it is like the two main characters, the two avatars you get, they're both white. And that is that was something that we talked a lot about in the plotting and casting of the film. Because like it was one of those things that it was like I was thinking about a lot, because it's like, well, if I cast these two characters as white and then the non-binary characters white, then it's like my cast is majority white, which is not something that I was like super enthusiastic. Like I love all my actors, don't get me wrong, but I want to try and also showcase a diverse amount of people within the film. But I also didn't want to make a film where it's like, oh, these two avatars are sort of like, you know, people of color, and that wouldn't feel realistic to what the story is as well. And also trying to make sure that I'm not like, you know, stealing anyone else's story and have it be like a story from my perspective, but also including these perspectives, which is why, you know, Jessica Nicole's character, and we can talk about them later, but Jessica Nicole and Jackie Cox's characters, they're both people of color, and sort of have elements that I both have textually in the film, but also want to explore later on with their specific backgrounds. And so anyways, going back to this, so the Adam and Eve part of it kind of ties into this like Christianized idea of gender, of like man had hierarchy over the animals, man had hierarchy over woman. You hear like the company's name is Advent, which is again very much a very overt reference to a sort of religious element of like and like sort of Easter, the coming of Jesus. There's also elements of like the very first thing you see in the film beyond the little flashback. The first thing you see after the title sequence is the two characters giving a T pose and an A pose. They're sort of like when you have computer models, they'll like usually put them in like a T pose, like standing like this to like keep the model there, or an A pose, either way. But when they're layered on top of each other, like they are really quickly in the film, they look like the Vitruvian Man and sort of reference the Vitruvian Man, which is also a very sort of like, mixture of science and religion. And again, this very like separating idea that like, science and religion have to be opposed, or like, you know, man and woman have to be opposed. And there's this ideal version of man that was sort of represented in those concepts that wanted to like, even in the sparse world, there's these very imperial sort of European ideas there. And then also at the end too of the like the creation of Adam, the two hands touching each other in the end credits, that's sort of kind of mirrored by the two hands touching each other here. But the difference is like the creation of Adam, yet there's a clear hierarchy in the hands, whereas our characters touch each other's hands like this, which is equal. So I think that's again, there's not overt, but those, and it's not something I wanted to be like, these are here, like to hit you over the head with them. There are elements that I wanted to be. So the name Aaron sort of reflected that Adam and Eve Christianized idea. So sorry for ranting all that at you.
We brought you here to rant. So we're super
harder.
Here for it. Our chat is super here for it. I'm super here for it. So no, it's I mean, I
love it.
I maybe have naively assumed that you just kind of named the characters after your fiance, but that's a really
in fact, I actually with Dr. Aaron, her husband's name is Aaron as well, so it's Aaron and Aaron. And Aaron, we called him Mr. Aaron. He was also the art director on the film. One of the nicest man. He looks like an actual Viking.
He was the guy wearing the kilt at the premiere.
Yes, that was him.
I saw him. Yeah.
Sweetest man, gives the best hugs. Like there's two experiences I'll briefly say. Like one, when I was at Star Trek Mission Chicago, I got invited to the Star Trek party, and I got to meet like Jack Quaid, Tawny Newsome, like all these famous Star Trek people were there. Like I'm in the room with all of them, and I kind of had like an anxiety attack, and I was like trying to keep it calm, but I was having an anxiety moment. And he comes up to me and he's like, and I had just met him for the first time that weekend. And he's like, "You okay? Do you need a hug?" And I'm like, "Yes." And then he just envelops me and like gave me like a safe space in the middle of this very crowded bar. So he's like the sweetest man. Bear. Yeah, he's the best.
Yeah.
Very kind man. Anyways, when I sent Dr. Aaron the script, I literally was like, "I promise you this is not inspired by you or Aaron. I had this before I even talked to you about it. So like it was actually something I need to like say, like, I swear to God, this is gonna look creepy, but I swear it's not based on you two.
Yeah, yeah. No, it's just such a wonderful little detail about like how different elements of the film like came together. So that's why I wanted to ask that question. So but yeah, no, the anxiety of big, oh boy, can I relate to that? Because I went through that at the Identiteaze premiere actually. So that was but I mean hey, I'm so glad I went. So yeah.
I guessed in my head that the characters would be Aaron before the film
Really?
did it. Like I watched it with two friends for the first time. I've now watched it more than that, but for the first time I watched it with some friends and we were like typing at each other while we were watching. We're like, oh my gosh, what about this? What about this? I was like, I bet it's gonna be Aaron, because that's like a gendered flexy word. It could be any gender and be Aaron. And I was like, oh,
I love that. I love that.
So sometimes I would pause and be like, blah blah blah, info dump about Jessie.
No, okay, I love it. That's amazing.
So fun.
We actually behind the scenes, we in the script, there's Aaron and Aaron, and then the combined Aaron we called Alex on set, just for like ease of like understanding who was who. So we had A Aaron, E Aaron, Alex, and then Mr. Aaron, who is our director,
So
Dr. Aaron for the producer, and then my AD was also named Aaron. So we called them AD Aaron.
I'm trying 6?
Yeah, I'm trying to think if there's any other Aarons. I mean, my Aaron, obviously, my fiance. I'm trying to think if there's any. I think that was all of them, but it was still a significant amount. So
yes,
because Chad is asking how many Aarons are in your life.
In my life, I mean, if you count the characters, there would be 7.
Yes.
All
right.
But in my life is like an everyday thing, like the 4. Dr. Aaron, Mr. Aaron, AD Aaron, and my Aaron as well. And I'm sure there's a couple others here and there, but those are the predominant ones that I see most of the time. So,
okay, I have a question we planned ahead of time for you. So the film Identiteaze was financed by the streaming service Nebula, but that wasn't always the case. Initially, it was going to be crowdfunded until Dave Wiskus swooped in to foot the bill.
Yeah.
What was that emotional roller coaster like? Because I was so excited for you when that news came in. I was like, oh my God.
It was actually really cool, but also like a weird relief, but also like a weird head switch, because what happened was we had originally planned on crowdfunding it. So we had like literally built the entire crowdfunding campaign. Like it was actually Kickstarter. So we like built the whole page. I filmed a whole pitch for a video that was coming out like that week. And I had filmed everything had gotten set, and we were like, all right, everything's approved. We're about to do it. We started scheduling like promotions on different podcasts. We're going to go to podcast, promote it and everything. And so I just went into the Nebula Slack and just basically put in the Slack, hey, to all the creators there, it's like, hey, it'd mean a lot to me if you're able to share it out. Yeah, just share out the Kickstarter to the other creators there. And Dave messaged me right off the back of that. And he was like, what? First thing he said was, well, technically you're not allowed to do that, just because there is a rule that I forgot in the contract that you sent up in Nebula, is you can't ask for self-promotion, just because then everyone would be doing it all the dang time in there. And it's just, there are people who are bigger and smaller, and it creates an awkward environment. So like totally good that. So he said that first. But he's like, but instead of having to worry about that, what if we just fund it? And so I go, wait, what? And I'm like, and he's like, yeah, we'll foot the bill. And I'm like, okay. So I talked to Dr. Aaron, and she was very much down for it, because like, yeah, we'll take the guaranteed thing and like the promotion and distribution that they'd bring. And so it was like the next few days were like canceling everything that we have been planning. I had to re-edit a whole video that I thought was done, like reschedule appointments, like podcasts that we had planned, and like be like, all right, we're not promoting the Kickstarter anymore and things like that. So like there was an immediate like hectic like everything has to change now. But then after that, it was sort of like it's going to happen. Like it went from this like, oh, maybe it'll happen, to this is definitely going to happen. And it was just a really cool thing. And it was nice to feel a sense of felt very legitimizing to have Nebula come in because, I believed in the film and I knew it was going to be amazing and great. And I believed in Dr. Aaron. I knew we could do it, but there is something that feels like, like people want to make this thing get made. And that felt very legitimizing in the same way that I feel like people funding a Kickstarter would have also felt legitimizing either way. And I'm sure we wouldn't be able to do it that way as well. But it was just this nice emotional thing of like, oh, like it's going to happen. People believe in it. And that means a lot because, as I talked about when I proposed to my Aaron, the whole reason that like films or anything happens is because people believe in a dream together. And we people have a dream that they bring into existence through a collective desire to make it happen, to perform it, to enact it upon the world. And through that enacting of that dream, we make it reality. And so it was a very beautiful thing and very amazing thing to have happen. And it's nice to have the support and legitimization and like even now that the film is out, with Nebula sort of like saying like we funded it, it makes it like I'm pitching Identiteaze as a TV series, and it's nice to say like, hey, this was made by a big thing. It gives it a little bit more of an oomph behind it.
I wasn't sure if you were going to say that, but I'm so excited that you did.
Oh yeah,
you're pitching it as a TV series.
Oh yeah,
that's one of the things I messaged you like the first night. I was like, Jessie, this is just the beginning. This is I need like more of this.
Well, we're actually going to get into that a little later in the show.
I'll talk about it. But yeah,
I can't even sit still.
I have a whole pitch deck of the entire
I know.
and things.
I've seen it.
I'm so excited.
You did see the pitch deck, didn't you?
Yes,
I want to see it. I'll put it in the group chat.
I can't spoil it for everybody.
No, it's true.
Secret.
It's true.
So yeah, I did have a couple other like more like production related questions. So the first one is being a Nebula production, that gives you access to some of the Nebula talents. So what was it like to work with other Nebula creators like, Abigail Thorne, Maggie Mayfish in person in a more like traditional Hollywood like setting as opposed to like just, collaborating on a YouTube video?
I mean, it was really wonderful. I mean, Maggie was the person who I worked the most with because she's one of the leads, and like she was absolutely like one of the coolest humans that I've met. So first off, just I could rant about every cast member all day long about how wonderful and amazing they are, but just focus on Maggie specifically. She is like one of the smartest people that you will ever meet, and she brings like when we did a bunch of rehearsals, and she was the entire time like really thinking about the character, finding ways to like, she knows the whole backstory of what this character, where they're from. So there is a reason they don't have memory. There's a reason, and there is an element of those things that she brought to the performance in specific moments that I don't want to spoil, but there are bits and hints towards who her character is, and like she was just thinking about really cool ways to express that. And as a performer, what I love about her performance as the character is she always has this sense of, I have so much more going on and I have so much energy that I just want to let out, that you can see it in her videos. Like you always feel like in her videos there's like a sense of like she's about to scream at you and like, listen and understand.
I believe the line that she used at the premiere was, she has a lot of big dick energy.
Exactly. And she like for the character of Aaron that she plays, that energy she used to like give the sense of like anxiety and like just inner like anger at first, but also anxiety that's just underlying a lot of that character's actions.
That definitely came across.
And and it's the thing of her character. I was like, everything that your character feels, she throws out into the world. Like, I can't feel it has to go out. And James's character, the boy Aaron, is kind of the opposite. He feels everything and it overwhelms him. She throws everything out into the world. Like she hits the wall,
it's very like I mean, as someone who deals with anxiety, and I'm very aware of like different approaches to it, because there are people who like internalize their feelings and there are people who externalize their feelings, and you have the one character is doing one and then the other character is doing the other. So it's very much like Maggie's character. She she's going through the anger, she's going through the anxiety, but she's like projecting it outwards.
Yep, exactly.
Yeah.
And it's kind of, and it was also kind of against the type too for the character too, for like a femme character, because a female character you would expect to, like, in a stereotypical way, be like, oh, a lot of like feeling all the emotions, being very internalized, kind of being very small. But that's James's character. And as the film goes on, as they encounter stuff like Anthony's character, you see the shift. Like at the end when like they're being interrogated by Anthony, like Maggie becomes smaller and like kind of becomes meeker and has more of like an internalized panic attack that James is having at the beginning, because that's like in the way Jackie performed, Jackie Cox, who played Anthony, like I want to do a side by side of both scenes, because we have the whole scene played out, not just the way we intercut it, because we had them play the entire scenes against each other and then intercut them, and they're the same exact lines, but the difference in performance is the choice that Anthony made, and it was very intentional, was Anthony wants the boy Aaron to be the one that chooses. He wants the choice to be that, like, boy Aaron chooses the door, both for like this patriarchal sexist thing of like, we don't care about women, but also to justify his own choice, right? Of like, I chose to be the boy, so I'm kind of like, you choosing that sort of justifies my own thing. And so you can see his performance to Maggie's character is like, I hate you, you are scum, you are small, I am better than you. And that instills in Maggie's character like a small, like she just gets instilled this anxiety that like sort of like bottles up her energy in a way that a lot of patriarchal worlds will do to women, tell you to be small, not express things, like be like very internal, and tell boys like James's character in that story to be very angry and to like get worked up as he does in that sequence. So it's again, we kind of jumped off from Maggie, but like working with her was great. And then Abigail was also really wonderful to work with. And she and I had, it was like a very different working relationship, because she did come to set, and actually we had an original filming date that got pushed for like SAG reasons, because there was like some stuff with like SAG.
SAG no, I'm well aware of all the what went down with that, so we don't have to get into that. But
you don't need to get into it, but it was a whole thing in of itself. But
it was a whole thing.
She wasn't able to be at her original recording shooting date because she was filming House of the Dragon, of which she'll be appearing in next week. She'll be in the next episode of House of the Dragon next week. But she wasn't able to make it to that filming. So we were like, oh, we'll green screen you in or something like that. We'll figure out what to do. But then we moved because of the SAG strike stuff, and she was able to be on set. And so I had rehearsals with her, but like her character is very, like, for 90% of it, she's auditory. So like we talked about the quick brief moments where she would be on camera, and what, again, there's a lot going on with her character that we wanted to kind of express even in these brief moments to like hint at stuff. So there was that, but she also, like, she had to travel from the UK. So like when she was on set, she had like 3 hours, and then she like had to be on a flight or something like that. So like it was a very quick time, but she was amazing on set, and she was great, like came ready to go, knew all her stuff, was like down to do all the stuff. But most of my time working with her was actually like in the voiceover booth. So we actually did some fun stuff, like playing around in the voiceover booth, like doing different takes of the character. It was really fun for her to figure out how to play an AI and add in little inflections of emotions in ways that didn't betray the AI-ness of the character, but still sort of add in like intentionality to what she was playing with it. And that was a lot of fun to play with in the booth and talk about in the booth with her. So that was sort of the main stuff with her. So like she was absolutely fantastic, and I've since then gotten more chances to like actually hang out with her, like at the premiere. She was at VidCon this past like few weeks ago. So like I've gotten more time to hang out with her since then, and we've like, it's been really great, and we've come to know each other a lot better. But it was it's just interesting, like when we worked together on the film, it was a lot briefer, and after filming it became, we got to work together much more. So it's kind of ironic in that way. So
that's awesome.
So thank you for, again, I rant for a while, so welcome to it.
No, hey, again, I'm going to keep saying this. We brought you on 2 rants, so like, please info dump as much as you want.
Cool.
So Jessie, speaking of working with some of the big names, you are definitely a Star Trek fan. We've
Mhm,
discussed that before, and
mhm.
it must have been really surreal working with John Delancey, who played Q. Can you tell us a little more about that?
Yeah. Okay. I'll start at the beginning because so he plays the kind of overall antagonist of the film. He's less. I would say Anthony is more the direct antagonist of the film, whereas Steve is sort of like the sort of overarching sort of like presence that's there that you feel throughout the whole film, but isn't the sort of like direct antagonist. If we get to tell more identities, that will change. But that's sort of his thing. And the original version of the character was actually much younger for different reasons, but for a couple things that we had to change that I don't want to spoil because it would spoil the rest of the story. We decided to make the character older. And as a result of that, we were sort of sitting there being like, well, who could play it? And Dr. Aaron sort of like threw out like, well, I know John, and the other name that we possibly threw out was Robert Picardo, who plays the Doctor on Star Trek Voyager. I'm like, both would be good. They would have very different energies.
Oh
for this
yeah,
character.
100%.
Yeah. And so I was like, I think John would be the one who I think would be perfect for this energy. And she spoke to him at a NASA event or whatever where they were both at, where they were like honoring Star Trek. And he was interested, but he didn't want to be a stunt cast. That was his big thing. He's like, I don't want to just like, I'm willing to hear you out because I trust Dr. Aaron, but I don't want to just be a stunt cast. So I sent him an initial email, and it was this like neurodivergent download of the character's backstory. And he was like, that's interesting.
Relatable.
But yes, that's interesting, but I don't know what that means to play that. Like, I can't play all that backstory. So I had to call him, and I remember pacing back and forth for the hour before the call. Because I was like, I'm about to call Q, you know? And I call him up, and he was like, we just like, it was Q, it was John, and he was very thoughtful. Like, we talked about his son and just like random stuff, but then we started talking about like the script, and he went through every line of the script. And the best way I can say about John is he is intense, but not in a demeaning or mean way. It's I care very deeply about this and like what you've written, and I want to like make sure I am going to bring out what you want, and if I'm the best fit for that, for what you want. And so we like went through every line in the script, and we were like talking about intentionality and like what this means. And what he and I kind of like, what he resonated with and what he liked playing was the sort of two inspirations for the character that I pulled from were one, very obviously, why am I blanking on his name now? Meta CEO.
Mark
Zuckerberg, thank you. Very much Mark Zuckerberg, because it's, you know, we're very much pulling from his metaverse storyline for the character. And then also Milton Hershey, who was the guy ran the Hershey Corporation and made like the Hershey Town in Pennsylvania, which, you know, he and a bunch of other sort of like capitalists around that time created these like company towns where they were like, you work on the company town, everything you own is for the company, like the company pays for your room and board, and they basically control your whole life down to the point where you get paid in scrit, which is not like actual money that you can use anywhere else, but you can use it within the company town. And that's so everything you buy from the company, you're just in that little world, which is very much like
it's abusive.
Exactly.
Yeah. I actually studied that in school.
Yeah. So like that's who the character is kind of based on. In fact, there's some lines, if you listen in the there's a scene in the film where he's on the TV and our characters sort of come back and like they're talking to each other and you can hear him talking in the background. If you listen, like we recorded there's like a whole paragraphs of lines from there. If you listen to some of that, a lot of that is just tech bro language reworkings of Milton Hershey quotes.
Wow. That's awesome.
Yeah. So if you go and listen to that, there's a lot of those.
Egg.
Yeah. But the thing that he resonated with is I showed him Zuckerberg's announcement for Meta, and he had never seen it, and he was creeped out by it. He was like, this man he's inhuman. It's very inhuman. He's selling something, and yet he's not connecting with people. And usually as a good salesperson, you know, will try to connect with somebody. And Mark Zuckerberg just can't do that. And it's because he has been so pulled away from the rest of human beings, because he is sort of seen as this CEO, this god, you know, like modern day gods as we have.
I think he might actually be a lizard person.
Yeah. But like he doesn't relate to people, but he still sells things because he believes he's owed it. He's
Mm.
like owed money because of like who he is, and not in, and so if you look at John's performance of the character versus who he actually like, there's the performance when he's on camera, and then there's performance that he plays in the after credit sequence. They're very different, and the version that he plays in the actual film and the actual like text main part of the film on when he's on the advent sort of orientation video is he's playing a salesperson who's not good at selling things, but he's like, you already exist here, so what does it really matter? And he thinks he's really good at selling to you, but he's not, but you're already there, so what does it matter? And so he already controls your every part of your life. And so that was like a really fun thing for John to play. Anyways, just to sort of bring it back to who John was. So we talked about all of that. And that was like something he was very connected with. And then from there, he was so I always kept being like, John, I understand you're a busy guy. You're doing this thing for, for, it's like a small project. Like I get you have other things going on in your life. Like he does concerts and sales, like he plays with like orchestras,
Okay.
surprisingly enough. So like
I did not know that.
Yeah, he's an orchestral player and everything. Yeah. And so he's very, very busy, but he came to every rehearsal that we did. He was always down, had no problems with anything. When it came to set, again, very intense, but not in a mean way, I want to get this right way. So let's like, what do you want from me? Let's go through the lines. I'm gonna make sure I get every intention, like every single line. Let's make sure I get it right. Yeah. Was very professional. Never screwed up a single person's pronoun. Like we had trans flags everywhere and we had pronoun pins on everybody, like non-binary people, everything. And like, not that I expected him to be like a bigot or anything, but he's also older. So I was like, okay, maybe non-binary stuff would be a little bit difficult for him, or he might screw up here and there. I'm willing to give him that grace. Never had a problem with it, not once. And he was amazing. And then there's some other stuff that I can't say on camera, but there's some stuff that he did beyond just the film that was super kind and very nice of him. That I can't say on camera, but like was wonderful. And then also, we finished the film and he came up to me afterwards, like, if you need me to do any voiceover, just let me know. I'm happy to do it. And we did a few times, like, need him to do voiceover of the film, like his monologue at the beginning of the film and things like that. That wasn't originally planned. We sort of added that after the fact as we were editing, and like, I think it would be a good opening to have that. And I emailed him and was like, look, if you don't want to do this, like, I know you're busy, like I can figure something else out. Like, I totally get it. And he's like, no, I'll be there. When do you want me? And he did it twice, and it was both times. Wow. And he was just the sweetest man. And so, yeah, John, I have nothing but wonderful, amazing things to say about John. He was the perfect gentleman and just an amazing collaborator to work with. So.
Oh, you love to see it. Yeah, because you hear so many like horror stories of like, these like drama queens and trips and stuff like that. So it's really like, it's heartwarming to see like there are still like good people in Hollywood. Where we last left off, we were talking about John Delancey, who most of you know plays Q in Star Trek: The Next Generation. But that's not the only Star Trek connection in this film. There's actually a ton of influences from Star Trek, but also a lot of other media. Would you say your biggest influences that inspired Identiteaze?
I mean, there's quite a few. I mean, the initial, like the most obvious one I would say beyond beyond Star Trek, I should say, is Severance is definitely a big one. If you haven't seen Severance, it's an Apple TV Plus show. It's about
that.
Yeah,
that's on my list of shows to watch.
So good. One of my favorites.
It's really good.
It's really good. But it has a very similar vibe. Like it's talking about similar but different things. So like their setup is, there's a similar setup in like people, this is the pilot episode, but it's like people without memory at a very corporate job. And there's a different way that goes into it. And it doesn't have the sort of metaverse thing on it, but it's still talking about like the corporatization of identity in a lot of ways.
Yeah. And they have the same like corporate town thing going on. When you were mentioning the Hershey Town thing, I immediately thought of Severance.
Yep, that's very much so. So there's that. Cube is also a big one. Cube was a big influence on me when I was a little kid. Cube is a sci-fi horror film, a Canadian sci-fi horror film from the either late 90s, early 2000s. I forget exactly when, but it's one of my favorites.
Yeah, that sounds about right.
Yeah. I was like one of the first, like my English teacher in high school gave me that, and it was like one of the first times that I encountered indie film. Like up to that point, it was like the big blockbuster movies or like movies that were like there was like the cult classics that you knew, but like nothing that was outside of the like some level of zeitgeist, whether you were in nerdy circles or blockbuster movie circles. So it was the first one was like, this is a movie that's off the beaten path. And I loved it because, again, it's a very anti-capitalist story. It's this like wake up in a room and don't know why we're here sort of thing. It's a genre that I love. I really like, I love the wake up in a room sort of genre because I love the chance to kind of discuss identity, discuss people being in a new context. Also, I love that it's very theatrical. I am someone who loves to direct in a very theatrical way. In the sense that like when we were on set, I would have the actors perform the entire scene every time, as long as they were down for it, because I didn't want them to like wear them out. But to make sure that they get the chance to like build into every emotional moment, because a lot of times in film you're like, all right, you stand here and just like do that big emotional beat, but no, like just right now, right on camera, do the whole thing. And I love to be able to like perform it in a very theatrical way. That's just kind of who I am as a director. And there's something about those types of films. You have a bunch of different actors talking with like a lot of dialogue and sort of like bouncing off of each other, like just bouncing off each other's actors, that I really just really love. And so Q was a big influence on me. Matrix, obviously, in a sense of like these like very digital worlds that we live within. And then a few other ones just to toss out there. Ursula K. Le Guin, weirdly enough, with why am I blanking on I'm blanking on names now. One of my favorite books from her.
Left Hand of Darkness.
Left Hand of Darkness. Thank you. I appreciate it. My brain just having brain fart right now.
I mean, it's literally, it's like I was thinking of like Ursula K. Le Guin novels.
My favorite is her Earthsea books are my favorite, but that Left Hand of Darkness is the big one of like.
That's the only one I've read. But I'm familiar with their other works. So Earthsea, I actually had to read. I had to read Left Hand of Darkness for a English class I was taking in university.
Very nice.
I took a whole class about science fiction and fantasy as an elective. So I read a whole bunch of science fiction stuff.
Hell yeah.
From like different authors and stuff. But it's funny because like when I was first questioning my gender, I made a throwaway Reddit account that was a reference to Left Hand of Darkness.
Oh, that's wonderful. That's perfect. But yeah, I love that book and I love Ursula K. Le Guin's work because she also really very much deals with identity.
Yeah.
My dream actually would be to do, and like there's been some adaptations of them, but they're terrible. But specifically the second Earthsea book, Tombs of Atuan, I desperately want to do an adaptation of that book. So badly.
So for anyone listening who might not be aware, Jessie actually has a whole video about Ursula K. Le Guin and video game Starfield, which I highly recommend. I thought that was a really excellent video.
Thank you very much. Yeah. So yeah, no, she's a big influence. I love Ursula K. Le Guin, big anarchist as well. So one of these days, I want you to talk to me about anarchism. I would be happy to
I want you to sell me on the idea because
I would be happy to. Yeah.
Yes, because I have a lot of probably a lot of misconceptions of what anarchism actually is about.
So do I.
I'm sure there's a lot of misinformation about it.
Yeah.
And I've heard you say this multiple times where you advocate for a society with a flat power structure. So I am someone that isn't completely willing to give up on the idea of hierarchies and power structures. Well, but I do agree that we could use some flattening.
The way anarchy works, and I won't go into a whole deep dive on it for you, but the briefest explanation that I can give is that it's not necessarily saying that there should be no power or no like structure. Like it's more saying that any power that is hierarchical in any way needs to A, justify itself, and B, not be centralized, like have one centralized person that it sort of goes around and sort of be dissociated amongst a group, and then C, never be permanent, whether that be permanent like members or like the institution or structure itself should not be permanent and only form when as needed. So like that's the basic version of that, and there's a lot of different ways and ideas about how that structure,
because like there's a lot of different flavors of anarchism.
Yes, but that's the basic idea.
Yeah, that's a conversation for another time, but that is a conversation I would love to have with you at some point in time. So we'll leave that for, I don't know, Discord DMs or something.
Yeah.
I don't know.
I
But
love
yeah,
anarchy.
so yeah, no, it's interesting because
Sharing power is very much a thing
yeah,
that I'm
because like
into as well.
yeah, because like despite um wanting some sort of hierarchical structure, I'm still very, very, very anti-authoritarian. So
Mhm.
like I think we can definitely find some common ground.
Yeah, I think so too.
Yeah.
And I think there's also
Yeah.
like Marxism too is not like that has a little bit more hierarchical stuff in it that you could do as well
Mhm.
that sort of matches up. I mean, there's a lot of different ways to think about this and a lot of different
Absolutely,
descriptions.
absolutely. So
yeah.
yeah, like I'm not like married to any one idea. I mean, like for context in chat, everyone, like I mean, I'm an economist. Like I have a master's degree in economics. So like that's how like economics is how I see the world.
Mhm.
And I think a lot of people have like misconceptions about that field. So
Yes, economics
but
does not mean capitalism, which is usually what
no, it
people
doesn't.
will assume.
Yes, it's yeah, exactly. So again, we're getting very off track here.
Yes, yeah. But it
Yeah,
kind of fits in identities in a way. So
yeah, it just kind of like it's again like identities is about the rejection of the binary.
Mhm.
And it's these ideas, it's not a binary way of thinking. It's like it's not like, oh, it's free, it's laissez-faire free market capitalism or total anarchy where there's no ownership of anything. It's like
Mhm.
those aren't the only two options.
Yep.
There's a
And
lot
even
in between.
And what I love about
Yes,
what I love about Ursula K. Le Guin, to talk about her a bit,
yes.
she wrote a book called The Dispossessed, and her pitch for that was like she had seen a lot of different uh systems and ideas had their like utopian fiction version of it before, of like, this is
Mm.
what the fascist utopia is, this is what a neoliberal utopia is, like
Mm.
those types of fictions. And so she wrote The Dispossessed, which is representing an anarchist utopia. But the thing that
Mm.
she understood very well is that when you describe a utopia, the interesting aspect of like writing about a utopia is to give it like an aspirational thing that we'll never actually reach. Like utopias are never achievable, but you
Sure,
write
yeah.
about them and you think about them to sort of see this is what we aim for. So she
Mhm.
did that with The Dispossessed. And then also The Dispossessed is a critique of anarchism as well, because you see like where the utopia world would break down for these
Mhm.
reasons. So she is very much, she identified as an anarchist, but she was certainly not someone who believed that anarchism was the perfect system. She would just argue, as I would argue, that it's better than the current ones that we are living under.
Yeah, and I think you should really starting to ask questions when you fully accept like any sort of belief system uncritically.
Mm-hmm.
So like no belief system is perfect. Like
Exactly.
everything has its flaws. So you should always be looking at everything with a critical eye.
Yep. It's why it's exact, and to bring it into identities, that utopian ideal. We're
Mhm.
talking about like the Christian Western in white supremacist view that like sort of is represented in Steve's world in the identities, right? And he views it as a utopia. Like, this is his perfect system, his perfect
Mhm.
utopia, and I've made it work perfectly. And anyone who does not fit is an aberration
Mhm.
to this world, and is aberrant, and as a result should not exist here. But what
Mhm.
he doesn't understand is that all people don't fit your perfect little system, and you trying to force people to be in that
Exactly.
mold is forcing people to kill parts of themselves, to deny parts of their humanity, to deny parts of themselves. We see that with Anthony's character very clearly. Of
Yeah.
that was the thing that that I really wanted to get across with his character, and why it was so important to develop him was I don't view his character as a trans character in like an overt sense. Like, our main characters to a degree kind of represent a like overtly represent non-binariness in a very literal sense.
Mhm.
But Anthony's character to me doesn't represent a trans character in that, like, oh, he wanted to identify as a woman and denied that part of himself, denied choosing a woman because he needed to be a man in this world. What he did do was kill a part of himself that was emotional and open and felt,
Mhm.
it was able to be empathetic. And he killed that element of himself. That's something that I would like explore more. Like, that's hinted at in the story in the first episode. But if you learn more about his character going on, like I have a whole backstory with him.
Yes.
That is actually my backstory I really want to tell of most all of the characters. That is
Yes.
really about like what it meant to kill that side of himself. And I think that everyone does that to some way, shape, or form. It's
Mhm.
why I'm like, one of the unfortunate things of like selling identities right now that I'm like trying to tell people about is that like it's all very difficult, especially to get like a story that is sold simply as a trans story in Hollywood right now.
Yeah.
Mostly because people will be like, oh, well, you're selling, like, okay, you're selling it to a trans audience, but who would want to, like, your trans audience is very small. And
Mhm.
because the executive brained people will only understand like market of who is being sold.
Yeah,
And it's like, this story is a story from a trans and queer perspective, very much so. But it is a
Mhm.
story that everyone will relate to because we all feel this way in some way, shape, or form.
exactly. And like I make that point in my video where it's like, yeah, the film focuses on the non-binary experience, but if you just use your imagination a little, this framework can apply to literally anyone.
And it's a
So
very
yeah.
conservative, and it's the mindset that underlies a lot of the problems that we
Mhm.
see today, is that, oh, society should be working this way. This is the ideal society. And people who do not fit the ideal masculine mold or whatever role you're supposed to fit for the machine are
Sure.
aberrant, are perverted, are they're why am I blanking on word again?
Deviance.
Deviant,
Yeah.
or an affront to
Yes.
God, or whatever
Yes.
sort of hierarchy that they sort of want to go to.
Yeah, and it's just like whenever someone talks about like their ideal society or their perfect society, it's my question, my response to that is like, ideal for who? Perfect for who?
Exactly.
Because no matter like in any arrangement, like there will always be people on the margins.
Exactly.
Mhm.
So yeah, that is very much a very clear sort of discussion that's happening within Identiteaze, and it's a very
Yeah.
one that's targeted at like capitalism specifically, sort of Catholic, like institutional religion subtly, and then obviously it's just like Western European sort of colonial mindset also subtly as well. So.
The
So
thing
that's
that I would
sorry, go
add,
ahead.
Jessie, is
Yeah.
like your film slash pilot is it's not only about like trans or non-binary people, it's examining the effect of gender roles on all people. And
Yeah.
that's the difference that you need to pitch to those number people, because literally everyone is affected by gender roles. If you look at cisgender men and how hypermasculinization has affected their mental health, and then the gun stuff that's happening in the United States, like that's a very clear example of how gender roles are affecting cis men that has nothing to do with trans people.
Yeah.
And so I think that your film is also looking at those things. It just happens to have a gender spicy character as the main character.
Yeah, exactly.
And so I think, I mean, literally anyone in the room that you're pitching to is going to be affected by gender roles. And I think that's maybe an angle you could take with them.
No, it's a very good point. And I mean, like, the ethos that I take, we were talking about like influences. That's actually a really good way to pitch it, by the way. I love it. There's the other influence that I have on this. I mean, it's quoted in the film itself, Glitch Feminism. It's a really wonderful like book that talks about us being glitches. Like we should be malfunctions in a machine to sort of fight back against everything we were talking about, like the way that the machine tries to force us to be one specific way. And then another thing that I've been thinking more and more about is this concept of queer futurity, which is a concept sort of not necessarily created, but very much influenced heavily by Jose Esteban Munoz, who is a queer philosopher, whose whole concept of queerness is that queerness is a sense of looking at a horizon that is coming, that we dream, that as queer people, we dream a world in which we are not queer, where we are not marginalized, where we are not outside, where we have a world that we get to where we get to exist as fully ourselves and be ourselves happily without oppression. And we dream that, and by dreaming that, we start to perform it ourselves in our everyday interactions with each other. And through our everyday interactions with each other, we build that world, and that brings the dream into reality. And that'll be like, that was a big thing of like influencing my thinking on Identiteaze, and is something that, again, I want to, again, I keep hinting at stuff I want to tell, but it's very much what I want to literalize in the story, because I want to, one of the fun things about having a digital space and a metaverse space and having characters that glitch the system is when you have characters who dream things and are thinking about what the world could be, the world in the context of this reality can start to glitch and become that. And I have very much imaginings of this story in the film kind of having more influence. There's that dance sequence in the film that kind of has a surreal element to it that I want to do more and more with identities going forward and do bigger stuff with that, where there's a sort of surreal element to the story that kind of is reflected in like these characters dreaming something and it getting to be actually literally created within the digital world and space around them, and doing some really cool visuals and things with that kind of represents that queer futurity. And also the other element that is part of that is this idea that queerness is a collective. You know, we tend to, again, we're talking about identities, like but identities that are sold to you by someone like Steve, like here's your avatars. You know, the identities that were sold today are like, you are this thing, you are, you know, gay, straight, bisexual, whatever. And while those terms are very helpful for us to describe ourselves, they are terms that are describing something that is, you know, much more complicated than our language could ever really fully encapsulate. And so those words are helpful to describe, but the problem is society tends to use those to prescribe, to sell you a label, and to then border you and say, this is who you have to be, and sell that to you and say, this is what the box that you have to stay within. And queerness in Jose Esteban Munoz's writing is a we that is not yet conscious, that goes beyond the borders of, you know, these identities that we've been sold in our everyday life. And, you know, someone like Steve in the film will kind of do the rainbow capitalism thing of like, look how magnanimous I am. I'm letting you choose. I'm letting you get an option. Isn't that really great? I'm really wonderful. Pat me on the back for selling you these options and benefiting myself. And pure progressive. But in actuality, it's just still like fitting the terms. It's fitting the boxes in terms that he's defining.
Yeah, I have a very personal experience, a recent personal experience with rainbow capitalism that, oh boy, I don't think we have time for me to tell the story on the show, but oh boy, the very short version of the story is that I had to change cell phone companies recently, and my cell phone, my new account, despite being a brand new account, had my dead name on it.
Oh, fun.
And oh boy, did they make it difficult for me to change it, because nobody knew how to do it. And when I went to the actual, they made me go to a physical store to update it, and they had pride flat stuff everywhere. It's like, and it's like all the staff, they're all wearing pride shirts, and I'm just like, I'm gonna say, like, just insert a swear word here. I'm not gonna say it on the stream, but just whatever. He's like, you a-holes.
You hackers.
You've been dead naming me for the last week. Don't click to be allies.
Yeah, exactly. It's exactly that. And it's this thing of like, the reason they couldn't change your dead name is because the system that they built, it like made it difficult to do so, because it wasn't built for you. It wasn't built for people like us to be able to do that. And it's just, yeah.
Jessie, would you say that, like, when you're writing about the glitches in identities, that you are thinking about gender abolition? Because I'm picking up on this thread of gender abolition in a lot of the pieces we've talked about today, from your personal journey from cis to trans to non-binary, and then talking about the glitches and not fitting. I don't know if you've encountered that before. Maybe you studied it, and I'm curious about, you know, how much gender abolition is part of your thinking around these topics.
I mean, I very much ascribe to gender abolition, but I always couch it in that it's an ideal. Again, it's an ideal. And we live in a society that does gender very much. And for many people, that those terms and that language is what they have to identify themselves with and to help them understand themselves. And I would never begrudge or judge anybody for that, but I very much am of the mindset that, yes, I do believe that the gender roles that we have today are usually engines of trying to create those hierarchies that I said, of like man versus woman, of like man above woman. Again, very like I want to say institutional Catholic idea, because not all Catholics subscribe to that, and there's many individual people who have their own connection to their religious beliefs that eschew that or deal with that in a different way. So, you know, I very much do think about gender abolition quite a lot, because I do think that that's ultimately the goal, but we understand that, like, that's a thing that we're walking towards, not a place that we're at. And that is often something too that I encounter people like attacking, not just gender abolitionists, but like you know, anarchism and things like that. You know, this idea of like, oh, well, you live in a fantasy land, you want to just you're describing utopia, and it's like, no, these are things that we're describing as like the goal, the things that we believe in and the things that we want to aim for and want to describe as like a thing to again, that queer horizon, right? But that's something that we walk towards, and it was something that we try to enact, but we don't want to, we don't want to like just get rid of, like, I don't think it'd be useful to just get rid of gender today, because I think that if I could erase gender for everybody today and just like make everyone forget it or something like that, but we still kept a lot of the institutional biases and things that we've been taught throughout our life, we'd end up maybe not creating the same thing, but still creating something that would still sort of create a similar dynamic of power and control and hierarchy and, you know, dominating. So so long and short of that answer is like, I do think about gender abolition very much. So I am very much an advocate for it, but I also understand the context and time that we live in to work towards that. So,
yeah. No, it's interesting. So I've been learning more about this stuff, specifically the concept of being agender. As one of my YouTube essay colleagues recently made a video about being agender, because they're agender, and like initially like their post was like abolish all gender, which like, but like I like my gender, but that's not really what it's about. And like so like I like performing my gender, but because it's something that I enjoy doing, something gives me validation, not because like I'm trying to live up to some external ideal or whatever. So like, yeah, I think the part of gender abolition that I can relate to is getting rid of this, you must perform your gender the way that we want you to, and more just, I want to perform what I want to perform. And even if it is performative, it's still like, it's my performance.
Exactly. And it's the whole thing we talk about. You know, I talk about like this like dream that we want to enact, this sort of queer futurity thing that I was talking about. Like, you think about gender, we think about gender being, you know, if you look at dear heavens, I'm blanking on names, but the Judith Butler.
Yes.
Like her idea of performativity, right? Which is the idea that what we perform becomes who we are, right? And it's what we choose to perform that is meaningful. And our society tells us to perform gender in this way, and that's who you should be, and that's how you should enact it. But we can choose to do a different performance or put that performance in a different context that would be different. And so when I think about like, oh, we perform a different world, like in my world, like an anarchistic type of world, like by performing that, we are creating a different world and a different system. It's very similar to gender in that sense of performativity. And so, yeah, gender abolition very much isn't like, let's get rid of all gender. It's more get rid of the gender roles and the sort of oppressive ways that gender is used to control people, and allowing people to express themselves, and maybe having terms that apply to like gendered terms for that person, and if that helps them describe themselves, but getting rid of gender as a engine of control and domination.
Awesome. So we've mentioned this a few times already during this pod. Identiteaze is meant to be a pilot for a TV series. So without getting into like any secrets that we're not allowed to talk about, can you give us a little tease of where the story is headed?
Yeah, I'm trying to think of the best way to talk about it without spoiling. I mean, there are things in the story that are very overt little pieces that I would pick up on. Like, we meet Michelle at the end of the film, where she comes out and has a very radically different image. And she sort of mentions things along the lines of, you know, if I'm going to talk plot, she mentioned things like, I thought you were one of the organizers here. And so there's a question of like, organizers of what? Who?
There's so many threads at the end.
Yeah, it's like organizers of what is she doing? What is that different look like supposed to be? Obviously, there's a coded reference of like, I switch my avatar's code to survive up there all the time, which is meant to be a reference to code switching. Yep, that you know, people of color often have to do in systems built for white people. So that was an overt reference, but like, what is she doing here, and what does that mean? So that I would love to explore with her character. There's a lot going on with her. Couple other big threads that I'll just mention to just get out there is Val. At the end, at the after credit sequence, you clearly see that she has a personality that can be switched off by John Delancey's character. and seems to be very affectionate with him. And yet, I don't know if you caught this, but it's there, and I'll just say it. If you look on the table, there's that picture with a same age Val, but a younger John Delancey and a baby. What's up with that? So there's definitely something there. Also, something else that I will mention that I didn't make textual, but it's sort of like hinted at. There's that several times where it says user prism, like override. And you're meant to think that the user prism is our main character, like the main character is overriding it. User prism is not our main character. User prism is someone else. And so why is another character named Prism allowing them to do this? Allowing them to become different avatars.
We may or may not have a Prism lurking in the chat right now.
Oh, speak of the devil. Yep. I will not spoil, but someone who very much influenced that character is in the chat right now.
Yes.
So yeah,
we see you and we love you.
So much love.
So yes,
who you are.
Yes, very much so. So that's sort of the plot stuff that I would very much like. Those are the immediate threats, and then also a couple other things too of like Anthony's character has I've already written Anthony's backstory. I wrote it. We originally going to do a prequel podcast that was like an audio drama that was going to be his backstory. That actually we did a scene of. There's an ARG fake website for if you do the Ventiverse website, go to ventiverse.com and there's like some ARG stuff you can find. There is a scene that is Anthony's backstory where he meets Steve's character, John Delancey's character, that is from his past that hints at some of these storylines, but he has a backstory that I really will love. But things that I would want to explore thematically with that show is kind of the stuff I talked about earlier about like queer people being able to like dream our own realities outside the system. These questions of domination and control. These questions of, do we really are we able to recreate something new, or are we just going to recreate the same systems of power? Like, because our characters, one element of it that like I wanted to be very, very clear about that, like, again, gets hinted at, was the reason I fought for Michelle at the end of the film, because there was some discussion of cutting her character just to make a cleaner, like, ending of like, hey, our character's a non-binary and it's great. But I was like, I do not want to end on this note of, oh, these white characters discovering they're non-binary being like the end all be all, like, yay, that's the answer. It was important to me to be like, characters like Michelle, a woman of color, are already there. They have already had this revelation. This is not something like new to someone like her, that this environment is oppressive and that we can switch our codes to.
Well, yeah, I mean, and then that's, that dovetails into like real life history where, pride was started by trans women of color.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so I want to explore that journey for our main characters, because, the Aaron character, the non-binary Aaron character, I want to be the character that is the thing worth saving in this world. Like this world, if I tell the story going forward, is going to be a very oppressive world, both within the Ventiverse and outside of it, because I would love to explore outside the Ventiverse and explore what it's like. What's the world outside of this?
What's the meat space like?
Exactly. And I have some fun ideas with that.
Yes.
Oh my gosh.
So I want to explore that. But what I want to explore that through is like, this world is very oppressive. The non-binary character, this joyful malfunction, is this thing worth saving. But to earn that character, our two Aarons, who will still be the boy and girl Aaron, will still be characters within the story, and they have some shit to work out, and they have some shit to understand and come to understand, both about themselves individually and also what it means to be in solidarity with other people and to grow a community and to get over your own bullshit. That will be explored further as we go. And then playing with things like other forms of identity, like something that I know was important to me. And I'm really glad, Meowster, that you picked up on it at the end there, because you sort of talked about it, I think, in one of your things that you sent to me or something like that after you saw the film, which was, there was many texts. Like no, but like people wearing the mask in the dance sequence, and I also had people of different bodies, so like larger size folks and shorter folks and different gender dance.
I want to be at that dance.
Yeah.
Oh,
well,
I was almost there.
Yeah. Well, I wanted it to be very important to me to like show that this is a celebration of a bunch of different identities, and I want to be continuing that in the story behind the scenes. So, there are characters that I will say that are, we have disabled characters, both in terms of mentally, having mental health stuff, as well as physical disabilities that I want to explore. And what does it mean to be someone like, there's a character that, again, I would want to hire, if we did this with others, I'd want to hire people to be able to make sure that they get to tell this story themselves. But what I'm already thinking about with certain characters is, there are disabled characters who have physical disabilities, but then they come into the Ventiverse and they don't get to represent that disability. They are given an able-bodied avatar, and that's not them either. And what would that be like? And what would
that's
that
my
feel
whole
like?
life.
Yeah.
I use a wheelchair in real life. And like, my favorite TTRPGs are where I still get to have a mobility device, but it has superpowers.
Yeah. Exactly.
Like, that's more fun to me than just like, oh yes, I'm an able-bodied himbo now. Like, no.
Yeah. And that's something I want
interesting.
to that's something I want to textually, like, there's a character that I want to textually explore that relates to Anthony's character. And so, like, those are all things that I want to explore thematically with the story. But, plot wise, there are some fun things. I definitely want, like, as the story goes on, John Delancey's character will become a much less background, sort of ominous threat, and become a much more overt threat. Anthony has a very interesting arc of where do his loyalties actually lie, and what is he going to be called to uphold the system or to help tear it down. Michelle being a very radical character that we'll get to explore, and our main characters having to deal with their own BS. And then also, I want to deal with one other thing too. Some, for lack of a better word, what would be the best way to describe it? Mind-body problem stuff, but also, which is a very sci-fi thing, but also like kind of eldritch horror cyberpunk. There's an element that is very vaguely hinted at in the film, that is got an eldritch horror bent to it. That I kind of would like to add into there. And the question I will just say, this is how I'll hint at what that is. The film deals a lot with the song that's in your mind that you can hear, that sort of the characters get drawn to, that they glitch. The question I would have is, where does that song come from? Because it is actually part of the world. It's not like some metaphorical thing necessarily. There is a textual reason for it. So,
oh, that's so cool. Well,
I'm so excited.
If you would like this stuff to actually happen and not just be ideas in Jesse's and Aaron's brain, I think you should all email Nebula and tell them that you want more identities. Give us more, please. Make the show. Do
you
it.
Have an email address for them? Because when I asked Jessie, how do we get the season to get made? Jessie said, watch the film and tell everyone you know. So I've been playing it on repeat on my computer and texting the sign up link that Jessie gets the money. Jessie's projects get the money to everyone I can think of. But give me the email address. I posted on the Reddit about it.
I mean, they should, if you go to the Nebula website,
discuss it more on Reddit.
Yeah, if you just go to the Nebula website, there should be like a contact
us. There's a contact us page. Don't tell them don't tell them that I sent you.
No, tell them that I said that, because I have no affiliation to Nebula. So
yeah, there's a Nebula contact page. So just go there. It's help@nebula.tv. So email that, flood that, help@nebula.tv.
I apologize for the Twitch chat. My camera is acting up. I'm trying to get it.
All I will say right now is, obviously there's nothing in concrete, but there are positive steps forward. There's a pitch deck made that with everything that I'm working on. And there's been some positive buzz in good places. The hard part is right now Hollywood's kind of rough for any creative at the moment. So that's one hard part. And then two, the hard part is obviously just being trans in this current world is also scares a lot of money people, unfortunately, which is shitty, but a reality to deal with. So that's the kind of things working against it. So just the more positivity, the more people being out there, I think we can tell them. And the other element that helps too is that we made this movie for around 100K, which is a lot considering how much like money that is for any of us. I mean, I wish I had
Yeah,
that
but
to
I mean,
spend on
like in the
things.
grand scheme of Hollywood, that's that's a drop
Nothing.
in the bucket.
Exactly. So
Yeah.
it's a surprisingly cheap series to make, I would think. So
Because yeah, it's a very like the set design is very minimalist,
yes,
right?
it's
So
very sparse. So
yeah, exactly. And like that's that's thematically the point, right? So yeah, no, it's I'm sending you all my energy. I really want this to get made. So, I'm telling everyone I know about this.
Very cool.
Um,
I can Meowster meat space. Well, I'll tell you later. The meat space is very different. I will say I have an idea for the meat space that I think will be kind of fun. So
yeah,
I'll tell
yeah.
chat what I wrote in our secret chat. I wrote, I
Yes.
wonder if Meat Space is anything like The Matrix. Because that's another trans made film.
Yes, it is.
But
it
like
is.
they didn't,
My meat space would be
the
very
Wachowskis didn't come
different.
out till later.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
Different.
I mean, obviously, I love the Matrix, but it'd be a different type of meat space.
Yeah.
Yes. I'm so excited.
Yeah, I know some of the details, and it's definitely something that I'm super into. So,
and it's also like
Yes.
the other thing I would want to explore too is like mind-body problem. Again, it's not super hinted at in this just yet. Which for those of you who don't know, it's like a science fiction idea of like the mind-body problem is like, do our bodies make who we are inside of our heads, or are we able to be separated from that? So like in a digital world where we can create our own bodies, what does that change about who we are, as what it means to be like a human being? Yeah, so that's something that I would be very much thinking about is like, can you exist beyond your physical body, and what does that mean in certain ways? And like again, talk about it in like a disability context, and talk about it in identity context. Like there's many different ways to play with that. I think it'd be kind of fun. So
yeah, it's such an open framework that like it's there's so many different ideas you can explore within this world. So it's like again, like I really want this to be made.
Thank you very much. I'm excited too.
Yes, I'm excited for you, and I'm excited for everyone who gets to see it, because we need more stuff like this in the world.
Yes. And also plurality stuff. Yes, I would love to explore that as well. I mean, the character, very much is a plural system, like the Errands is a plural system, and that is textual and metaphorical, but also there would be some literal representation of that.
Yeah. So if you want to know more about plurality, we have quite a few pods about that subject. So if you're listening to this in the future, check our backlog.
Groups of folks.
The main Errands would not be the only plurality representation. And I will also say, like, because there were people that were picking up on that when the film came out, of like, oh, I see myself in this character. That is very intentional. Like that, the plurality aspects of that character is very intentional. It was not just incidental, and there is a textual reason for that. So.
How many plural eggs did you hatch with your film? You will never know.
Amazing.
So cute. Oh my gosh.
Oh, very cool.
I'm so delighted. I don't even know what to do next. There's like, we have a few more questions, but I know we're running really low on time.
Yeah. I mean, I can do speed run.
Sure.
You want me to do a speed run?
Yeah. So we can do a little speed run of questions
to.
from chats.
Yeah.
So Trash Can Wolves asks, how did you get your start as a director?
Yeah. Quick answer is I actually went to college for it. I went to film school. Got inspired when I was a little kid by, all the stuff that I mentioned before, Star Trek, science fiction, that sort of thing. Would make like videos for school. Like whenever there was a project they allowed you any sort of like choice of what to make, I would always do a video. Then went to film school for it. And so I directed 2 short films in college. And then after college moved to Hollywood, but then fell more into journalism. So I started working The Advocate and Out Magazine, Pride.com, things like that. So, and then doing YouTube stuff, obviously from there. And not to say that there isn't filmmaking to be done in that, like that is still filmmaking in a lot of different ways, but obviously not doing fiction. But I also did, again, working with actors, one of my favorite things. So I also did a bunch of Meisner acting training, both in college and after. And so Identiteaze was the first film of this level that I've ever done, and it was the first fiction thing that I directed outside of a film school context. But I did go to film school for it, and I have had like I don't consider myself an actor, but I've trained as a director by like learning how actors work and do work and things like that. So that's the short answer to that question.
Gigi's in chat asks, what techniques or methods do you use in writing your pitches?
Ooh. I usually try to find a structure. Like I've made a few pitches on a few different TV shows that I want to make with like Dr. Aaron and stuff like that too. And we usually sit down. Usually I like to sit down and sort of figure out what the story is first, like create a story of it. And then I'm a very visual person. So I like finding like what's going to be some cool visuals that go with this, like create a mood board sort of thing is very helpful. And that's sort of how you want to pitch to executives, because they'll kind of want to know what it's like. And so getting to like show them it's like this. Also, it's very helpful with Identiteaze that like there's a finished piece that's like it would look like this. But creating like I made like when I was making Identiteaze, I made like a mood board, sort of like these are visuals that I'd want for the piece and things like that. Like 2001: A Space Odyssey was very much an obvious reference. Tron was a reference as well. So like the end of 2001: A Space Odyssey, when that very white room. And so those are big things. And then I don't know, I like to just kind of write like again, I break it up. I usually go by like, here's the sort of like tone setter overall view, here's the one line pitch, here are things that are like, so like the Severance plus the Matrix equals Identiteaze would be the thing, because executives like that. And then character breakdowns. Honestly, I love doing pitches because pitches are very structured. Like you can there's many different ways to structure them, but they are very like, here's the things that you need for them. And that like my neurodivergent brain likes that structure, as opposed to like writing more like video essays or like even episodes of TV shows, because like there's a little bit more playing with structure, which I think is fun, but it's a lot more like, whew, there's a blank piece of paper here and I don't know what to put. Whereas pitch is like, here's very much the things that I fill in. So
yeah, awesome. So Trans Capybara asks, in Identiteaze, the characters separately experience putting a part of their body across a boundary and their recoil, screaming in pain. It seems there was a lot of focus on their expression of how painful it was. I'd like to learn more about how and why it was written and acted out in that form, and the possible deeper metaphor, maybe.
Ooh, okay. Yeah. I mean, the deeper metaphor is very much the idea that we're supposed to be in binary opposites of each other. Like these systems like these of like this, the systems of hierarchy that we have today are built on binaries, and binaries that are seen as directly opposing each other. So like, you know, you see in a gendered way, femininity is framed as the opposite of masculinity, and there's not supposed to be any overlap. So like men are supposed to be aggressive and angry, and women are not supposed to have that at all. And anything that is seen as feminine in a man is seen as like something you should kill or throw out, or makes you less of a man, or makes you weaker or something like that. And that's just the case with a lot of different hierarchical stuff. So like even in like the racial hierarchy that you see is like black people versus white people is like, you're very different. And like people who are biracial I've seen is like, oh, you're half and half. You're not a full person on your own, you know, your own like own standards. And it's sort of like creating this like separate binary. So when that wall that's in the middle there between those characters is very much a like, oh, you are not supposed to touch. You are not supposed to connect. You are not supposed to connect. And even on a deeper level, it's like this idea of you're not supposed to connect to the other. By separating us out, it's supposed to generate fear in the other. Like we are supposed to be afraid of the thing in the mirror, afraid of the other, afraid of the thing inside of ourselves that it's different, afraid of all of these things. And so that's where the barrier comes from. And the painful part of it is that if he builds a system this way, he's going to make it so it's not very nice if you break that barrier in any way, shape, or form. But there's also a little hint in that too, because this may be giving away the game a little bit too much, but screw it. It's actually hinted at in the film too, where Anthony pokes them in the head and they feel that, which if you're in a digital space, you probably, unless you have like haptics on or something, which he asks, you shouldn't be able to feel something in a digital space in your body. So what does that mean that our characters who do not know who they are can feel things in this world? So that's another element.
yeah.
to it.
Interesting. Yeah.
I love that. I'm going to skip down 2 questions and then go back because it kind of relates to what you were just talking about. So Voice of Wind is asking, will the series go into more depth behind the lapel pin meanings? There's pretty clear significance to the blue versus red-green split. Will there be solid red or green other variations?
Yes. So yeah, that kind of fits into what I was talking about, because the red and green is those are the company colors, which kind of fit into that thing of like binary hierarchies, things that are like against each other. The A and the V, like the symbol is like, if you look at the symbol of the Advent Corporation, it's the A from Advent and V for Advent as well in there. And then also there's the Adam and Eve in there, Adam, the A, V, the V. Also, if you like, other small things to notice as well in this, if you notice that every character, like every person, when they have the lapel pin on, the green is on top. Like the green lapel pin is on top when they wear it, but every object, the red thing is on top. It's the red aspect of the logo on top, but that's supposed to represent how feminine people are often objectified, because red is the feminine color in this world. So objects get the red color on top, people get the green color on top. And so
there's just so much attention to detail in this film, and I love it.
I know. And I'm wondering if it's red, green, blue, like the colors of
RGB,
like the old TVs and stuff. RGB.
That was the other element.
Is like maybe kind of non-binary, but also maybe like rebel-y colors. Maybe it's purple. I don't know. Like,
well, that's no. Well, that's last thing I'll get into.
I wanted to text you all this stuff.
No. RGB is also supposed to represent like red, green, blue, those colors. But other things that I would talk about as the series go on, we get introduced. And also as we get into Advent, you'd see more of like red and green. It's a very binary color scheme. But also it's supposed to be like green is the boy color, red is the girl color, which are not the normal like blue and pink that we have today.
Right.
Like it's sort of saying like in a different world, like how these are very socially constructed binaries. So like it's different, but it still represents the like gender binary in this new social construction. And then also as the series goes on, perhaps as we get to meet different groups and different organizations within this world, the color schemes will get more complicated and what that will mean. And also, like, for example, last thing I'll say, because it's in the film, so I'm very excited about this stuff.
No.
Michelle,
don't apologize.
Michelle at the end, when we see her in her new colors, like in her new outfit, she's still wearing red. And so there's an element of her that is reclaiming the color red, and this would become more textual in the film, but reclaiming the color red as a sense of power, and like reclaiming this color that has been very gendered as a powerful thing. But also what that would mean too, because there are people like if you look at our world today, not to say that Michelle's character is this, but like you look at like TERFs claim like femininity and like the pink pussy hat sort of thing, and that can be very problematic and ostracizing. So like those are elements that would get to be played with in terms of the color scheme as well within this world. So there's a lot of thought that I want to, like, the colors are very stark, red, green, and blue throughout the film. And it's something that I would want to evolve and complicate and be in conversation with visually throughout the film, if not necessarily overtly textually. So.
Oh, I love it. So we have another question from Voice of Wind. So in Identiteaze, for the choice of boy or girl, the clock for Aaron's green side is 12 and Aaron's red side is 9. Why? Is that a reference to something?
Oh, I'm glad people caught that. So the reference there is just that was a choice made by Caledonia Hansen, who was our set designer. And it was something we talked about, and it was supposed to mainly reference the fact that these are characters that are working in different time zones. So like it's a digital space, but like one character may be physically in like a New York time zone, another character may be in another time zone. So sort of represent like there's still reference to the physical world within this in this space as well. But also the clocks themselves are sort of representing like the metronome was such a big thing in there, and how capitalism controls our time. Like time is money. Time, you gotta make every moment efficient. You have to be doing things on a specific time. So just the clocks themselves were representative of that, and the metronome sort of aspect sort of mirrors it. But the time zone thing was there. We actually did have a joke on set where we're like, well, New York time zones are for boys and Pacific time zones are for girls or whatever it was. That was just a joke on set that we had.
Amazing.
But yeah, that's basically what's supposed to represent is like in this digital space, the meat body, their meat body, wherever it exists, may be in different time zones than someone else. So
all right, I think that's gonna do it. We actually had a whole we're gonna go into a whole discussion about another film I watched recently, but I think we're running out of time here, so we'll save it for DMs. Unfortunately, or hey, if how about if 20 people join our Patreon, we'll do a third Jessie Gender episode where we talk about other trans art. So if you want that to happen,
it's up to Jessie. I would love that.
I would love that anytime because there's so much.
So we do have a Patreon. Please sign up for it. Help support the show. This is completely volunteer run. I don't get paid. Meowster doesn't get paid. This is a labor of love. So any donation will help with that.
And I'll add, I was late to tech today because I was mailing out Meowster Mutual Aid prizes, and I spent $120 mailing things to people from the event. And we need to make $120 back so that our bank account doesn't charge us $10 a month just for having money in it. So please sign up on Patreon. Even if it's just the $4.20 tier, which is funny numbers. It went for funny numbers recently. I changed all the tier amounts to be funny.
I'm a big fan of just swooping into like fundraisers and just doing it to get it up to a funny number.
Yes,
I like funny numbers.
One of our friends, Dead Domain, just did a 24-hour stream. I just swooped in. It's like, let's make it 69.
Yeah,
nice.
do it.
Yeah,
we love that so much.
We'll start wrapping up here. So Jessie Gender is a YouTuber and filmmaker who uses sci-fi and pop culture to discuss LGBTQ issues. You can follow her at youtube.com/@JessieGender1. And you can check the show notes for her social media and all her other stuff. And of course, sign up for Nebula where you can watch Identiteaze right now. Do it. I commend you. Here is this week's Cloud Query that you, our audience, can answer on our social media platforms.
How do you think sci-fi needs to change in the future to better talk about today? That's
a great question.
Yeah,
I love that.
I always like to see because sci-fi should evolve and ask different questions through time. Because sci-fi is not, as Ursula K. Le Guin said, sci-fi is not predictive; it is descriptive. So yeah,
it's sci-fi, weirdly enough, isn't about the future. It's about the present.
Very much so.
Yeah, awesome.
All right. So I will say more words now.
Yay, more words.
So our next guest on Genderful will be Swolsome, he, him pronouns, and we are discussing YouTube video essays, which is very exciting. Also to the Twitch chat, stick around because we're going to raid Aeronach, and I would love to have a big showing of pals for the Aeronach raid, which Aeronach and Jessie work very closely together. If you didn't know, they're like besties.
And Aeronach, and I
Miranda
shout out to
and Jessie
Aeronach.
and Aeronach.
Aeronach was very influential in the thinking of especially future-facing plot lines for Identiteaze. And also on my channel, just generally, like Aeronach is the best. So
yeah, no, we love Aeronach. She's the best.
Big love. I DM'd Aeronach. I was like, I want to raid you. Go be online. Aeronach was like, I'm on it, dude. I'm like, okay. It was very like, you got it, dude. Like the GIF.
Yeah.
Anyways, so I have a larger than average pile of community updates for you all because we haven't been live in a little while, and also it's August and I'm a Leo, so there's a lot of parties coming up that we would like you to attend. So first I want to recap Meowster Mutual Aid. We raised somewhere in the neighborhood of $9,000 for that, and that is benefiting me and my bottom surgery and my need for various devices to make my wheelchair easier to use. So we are actually still about $5,000 away from that goal. And a couple of my friends were like, Meowster, we're just going to keep fundraising for you until we hit the goal, which is so sweet and kind. So keep an eye on socials for any Twitch streams that say Meowster Mutual Aid. And there are two of those coming up this week that I'll tell you about. There's a bunch more in the Gender Federation Discord, but it's so on tomorrow, Tuesday. So the live stream people, this isn't mostly relevant to you. If you're listening later, go watch the VOD. It's probably on my GenderMeowster VOD channel. But on Tuesday, tomorrow, I'm going to be opening 2 big tins of Pokemon cards on stream, which was a Master Mutual Aid unlock that we did. And that is going to be fun. I have no idea what's in there. I know that there's a couple of foils and shinies, and I'm like very excited because I've loved Pokemon for a long time, but I haven't opened a Pokemon card pack since I was probably 10 years old, and I'm turning 35 this week. So it's like really fun to like let my inner kiddo be like, I get to play with Pokemon cards some more now. Yay.
I had similar things with Magic the Gathering. They had Lord of the Rings Magic the Gathering cards recently, and I'm like,
Oh,
I
yeah,
shouldn't get
yeah,
back
I
into this
heard.
because it'll be dangerous, but opening a pack of those again was
I
nice.
just
so
started playing a
fun.
TCG. I'm playing the Star Wars TCG, and it's wonderful. And I got to open
Oh my
packs
gosh.
recently, so I'm just like, oh.
Yay.
Yeah.
So fun. I love
Yeah.
it. So Thursday is my big birthday bash, and you all are
Yay.
invited, not only Jessie and Miranda, but also chat. You're all invited to my birthday party. It'll be on
Yay.
Twitch. Both the Tuesday and Thursday streams will be live from 11 a.m. to 2 p.m. Pacific. And we have so many prizes for my birthday party. It does not fit on a graphic. Like I tried to count. I don't know if Kamyanya is listening to me. It might be somewhere like 40 prizes.
Yeah.
So we have goals for,
Just imagine a big spreadsheet.
like, I haven't even planned content for my birthday because what I'm hoping is people show up and donate money to Meowster Mutual Aid, and it's just oops all giveaways for the whole stream, and us like giggling on stream and maybe drawing and like just giving away stuff every 5 minutes for the whole time. But I will highlight 2 very exciting giveaways that are part of the possibilities. I won't tell you the amounts, but 2 things. One is a lifetime membership with Undead Voice Labs for voice lessons, like trans gender affirming voice training lessons. I think that comes also with their Jumpstart thing. So that's a $2,500 value. Very exciting. And Undead Voice Labs and I met earlier a week ago and talked about offering one of those as a giveaway for each mutual aid event that we run just for the rest of time. The Gender Fed now has that as a standing.
Oh, that's so
thing.
cool.
So Capybara and I also got 2 of those, one each, so that we can do that and make content about it. So here's the announcement. It's a thing now. Woo, exciting. So you'll get to listen to my voice transform into a darker color and Capybara's into a brighter one, which I'm very excited to share with you. So that's one. And then the other, I asked Jessie on break, if we hit a certain milestone during the thing, could we collectively have an Identiteaze watch party with Jessie? And Jessie, I think, said yes.
I am down. My big thing is I just need to figure out when it would be, because I would love to do that. It's just more this week and the next week. I'm actually working on a big video that Miranda helped with on this one.
Yes.
Streaming of the internet.
That's so exciting.
So
But
once that is
immediately, but we'll schedule it.
But yes, if it's in beyond the next 2 weeks, I would be more than happy to. In fact, I would adore doing that. That would be a lot of fun.
Aw,
It's so fun. It's so fun.
awesome.
So we'll set that goal once I finish finalizing all the milestones. But that's the offer, y'all.
Yeah.
That's the offer. So that's my birthday party. It's also my 4th affiliate anniversary. So we've been streaming on Twitch 4.5 years and affiliated for 4 years. And we're celebrating all of that on Thursday. So there are 2 mutual aid events coming up that we wanted to make sure that we mentioned. There are signups for streamers, admins, and Twitch mods. So even if you don't have money, there are things that you can do to support all of these efforts that our friends are doing. So the first is Jazz and Teal Mutual Aid. Jazz and Teal are looking to raise approximately 1.6 euros, which is an equivalent of $2,100 US between August 9th and 10th. So this upcoming month. They have learned that their lease is not being renewed, and so they need to raise this money in order to secure safe and stable housing. And so that's what's going on there. And then the other one is with Kami Anya, who having a struggle pasting. Haha. Kami Anya is a very lovely person who planned a whole lot of my event. Which I'm so
she really did
grateful
it.
for.
She did a ton of work for the last mutual aid event. So yeah, big props to her.
They really did. So Kamiyanya is running the Compression Item Mutual Aid, CIMA, CIMA, August 30th through September 1st or 2nd. It depends on how many streamers sign up. And so the current goal is at least $8,000. 40 people have already signed up to receive compression items, and they're partnered with BB Pins, which is super cool. So the participation form I just dropped in chat, we'll make sure it's also in the notes for the episode. The recipient form to ask for items is also available. That's a Google form. And again, the participation form is for streamers, admins, and Twitch mods. Anything you want to do to help, one form to rule them all. So CIMA is funding both disability and gender affirming compression items for those who need but cannot afford them on their own, while in tandem supporting the marginalized owned businesses the items will be purchased from. So it's a win-win. Like, we're supporting small marginalized business, we're supporting people getting the compression items they need for disability and gender reasons. And this has been an idea of Kami's for several months, if not years. And so I'm really excited to support both of these. I'll be participating in both events. So lots of mutual aid in August. The Leos are going wild. But that's what's coming up.
That's what everything is built on.
As Miranda mentioned, if we hit 20 subs on Patreon, Jessie's going to come back and do some more chatting with us about nerdy things, nerdy trans things.
Come back anytime anyways, but you give money to Patreon.
Don't say that out loud. They're not supposed to know that.
No. I will give money to Patreon. It's the only way I will come back 100%. There's the camera. I should look at the camera when I'm doing it. I will never come back unless you join the Patreon ever. I'm very serious about this.
How about this, Jessie? Will you read all the names at the end of the episode if we hit 20?
I would,
because you do such a fun job of that.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, I would love to. I would love to do that.
You make a song out of it.
I try to. I wish I played the guitar.
It's like amazing.
I want to play the guitar. I wish I knew how to play the guitar because I would love to make a actually play a thing to it. But I'm not good at.
I can
guitar.
teach you like 3 chords.
Yeah. Just give me one that I could play and just do and like.
I learned how to play guitar in high school to get girls to like me, and it didn't work. So I stopped playing after that.
I played guitar
dance to get girls to like me, and it did work.
I played guitar for 3 years. In middle school, and remember none of it, and I think I could play like Smoke on the Water and the SpongeBob SquarePants theme song and the Star Wars theme song, and that's really about the extent of my
I think I still remember the basic chords. But because I have a musical background, so I played a bunch of different instruments, so some of it is still in my brain somewhere. I just have to reconnect the neurons.
I played trumpet for
so did I
10 years. Up a little past college, so I should play trumpet again too at some point. It's fun.
Yeah. Anyways, we're getting off track here.
Yeah, sorry.
So,
because I need to run away in 10 minutes. So
yes.
So Genderful would like to thank all of our wonderful supporters on Patreon: DJ Nerd, Miranda Katita, Holly Blash, Loch Ness Gamer, Justin Baker Rojas, Yaicio, Ray of Swords, Mirror Me, The Hessian, and Trans Capybara. Enjoy our outro. Genderful would like to thank our guest for being on this podcast. If you'd like to catch us live, join us on Mondays on twitch.tv/GenderMeowster. Show notes will appear in the edited versions of the show on Fridays on both YouTube and podcasting platforms.
If you have a question you'd like the host to answer, or are gender diverse and would like to request an interview, please send an email to genderfulpodcast@gmail.com or sign up via the website at genderfulpodcast.com.
As a gender diverse community, the Clouder wants to assure our listeners that we are prepared to moderate our spaces. We will get positive and negative feedback on these shows and topics, and we have a moderation team on our channels, socials, and Discord server ready to deal with this.
Please join our Discord server at discord.gg/meowster to meet the community and get a regular digest of solidarity resources. You can also support us with subscriptions on Patreon, following and reviewing us on your favorite podcasting platform, or engaging with our posts and content on social media at GenderfulPod and at GenderMeowster.
You can take a few minutes to rate the show. We will post any 5-star reviews on our socials, so get creative. Mention a special interest of your own, a project you're working on, or even say hi to your comfort person in your review. What power!
This show is made possible by volunteers, tips, and subscriptions. Shout out to the folks helping us coordinate guests, edit the podcast, moderate the live chat, and post on our socials.
Here's our artist credit. Genderful is hosted by Miranda and GenderMeowster. Genderful's pre-show is wrangled by JuiceTex. Genderful's live stream is produced by Mirami. Genderful is edited and mixed by Transgriffin and FreeRangeMegs. Genderful's promos and thumbnail graphic are designed by Transgriffin. Genderful's social media is managed by Kainsey. Genderful's theme song is called Hope by FreeRangeMegs, also known as Soma. The current GenderMeowster logo was designed by Siptopia. Genderful is the intellectual property of GenderMeowster. All rights reserved. Trans rights are human rights. That's right.